Ever wonder why your team might be struggling with retention, engagement, or just proactive behaviors? The root cause often boils down to one critical element: trust. Without it, even the most talented teams can fall apart, but with it, the possibilities are endless. Look, so how can you, as an executive, build trust? Well, welcome to the Executive Pill, the podcast where top leaders gain actionable strategies to lead smarter and influence better. I'm your host, Alex D. Tremble, CEO of GPS Leadership Solutions. I was the youngest to create and manage an executive leadership development in the U.S. federal government. I've published 4 books in the area of executive development and executive connection building, and have coached leaders at Fortune 500 companies as well as executives in the federal government. I've seen firsthand how building trust can transform teams. So you're looking in the right place. This is the place where we're going to share some ideas that are going to solve your trust issues within your team and hopefully help you and your team get to the next level. So the solution. The solution of building trust isn't complex, actually, but it does require intentional actions. Stick with me here. And I'll share some practical steps you can implement today to create a culture of trust within your team. And trust me, you don't want to miss the personal story I'll share later on, just so you can see how powerful these trust actions can actually be. So, first things first, I want you to think of someone with whom you trust. Someone who immediately, when you think of trust, this person pops into mind. Have you thought about that person? Now, I want you to take a minute to think about what did that person do or what does that person do to garner trust from you? Take a moment. You got that person now? Great. Now, I can promise you one thing. Even though I don't know you or that person, I know the reason why you trust them is because something they did, something they actually did. It's not because of what they thought. It's not about what they felt. It's not even about what their philosophy on leadership or trust or anything was. It was about literally what they did. They spoke up when they were supposed to. They came through on a project when they were supposed to. When they said they were going to do something, they did it. All those things are actions. They're not thoughts. They're not feelings. And I start off this because I want you all to realize that trust isn't some magical ooey gooey, butterflies and rainbow thing that just some people can garner and some people can't. Trust is nothing more than a set of behaviors, which you just said. You said people did these certain things. If they did certain things, those are behaviors. And if behaviors are the core of trust building, then any one of us can learn those behaviors and implement those behaviors into our daily lives. So now that we have that foundational piece, let's break down the practical ways you can build trust within your team. First, honestly, communicate openly and transparency. Trust starts with communication. Share not just success, but also your challenges. When your team sees you as transparent, they're more likely to trust your intentions. The reality is that so many managers that we work with when we're leading workshops and executive retreats, we talk about the importance of being transparent and communicating. And the first thing they'll say is, well, I can't tell everyone everything. I can't share this information. Or what if they use this information wrong? Or, this is just a little bit of information. What if they take it the wrong way? And we say, well, if you're not supposed to share something, then don't share. But transparent isn't sharing everything. Transparent is letting people know what you can and cannot share and letting them know, hey, at this moment in time, this is the information I have. I'm happy to share it with you. Or at this moment, I can't share anything else, but I promise you, as soon as I know more, as soon as I can share more, I will share it with you. But please know I'm working on your behalf. Now, yes, that second one is harder, but it doesn't have to be hard. If you spend the time on the front end building and nurturing those relationships, so when something does go wrong, people are more likely to actually trust you, then that second one doesn't become that much difficult. That's so difficult. So again, being open and transparent doesn't mean that you have to share everything, but it does mean that you're willing to tell people what you can and also tell them what you can't tell them. Also, the second piece, and this is what I run into with a lot of executive leaders, is that they say, well, what if I open up for transparency and I try to communicate more, but they ask me questions that I don't know the answer to? Well, the simple answer to that is to say you don't know the answer. That's also transparency, letting them know, hey, you know what? I don't know anymore yet. Or, you know what? That was a good question. Let me come back to that. I'll have my team dig into that. And, I will reach out to you next week to give you an answer. And you know what? If I don't, please ping me if I don't get back with you. And if you don't have the answer next week, say, you know what? I'm so sorry. We're still digging in it. Well, I'll get back to you the following week. But you have to be committed to being transparent, letting people know sometimes when you don't know something. And also, oh my God, just telling people sorry sometimes, right? Hey, I messed up. I know I'm a father of he's my little boy is a year and a half old now. And I've been thinking about this so much already. How many parents are willing to call their kids out or try to correct their kids when they do something wrong? But how many parents are also willing to say, hey, look, sorry, such and such, or my boy, Oka. Hey, sorry, Oka, I was wrong. You were right, it can feel very hard as a parent as well as a supervisor and or a leader to call yourself out when you're wrong because you think that may be used against you. But I'm promising you, it doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. It makes people understand that you're willing to call yourself out. You're willing to hold yourself accountable just as you're willing to hold other people accountable. I'll tell you, one of the best experiences around trust that I've been around is when I worked with it was a car part manufacturer, and they were going through a very, very tough financial situation. Sales are slowing down dramatically. And so what they did initially was they had around the clock services. So they had 4 different shifts consistently going around the clock. And you know what they did? They told everyone how difficult things were. They had this thing called a rumor mill. So every week people could write their rumors or write questions they had and they put it in the box. And then the GM of the plant would come into an all staff meeting at the beginning of each session at new shift and just go through and read everything and answer the best he absolutely could. Shared all the information. Um, and you know what? Uh, Initially they had 3 shifts, and then they had to pull it back to 2 shifts, and then they had to pull it back to 1 shift, and then ultimately they had to start laying people off. And again, in my role, part of my role was to send those letters out. It was very, very hard because I knew these people had families. They're freaking amazing people. I laughed and joked with them, right? They're amazing. But what the craziest thing happened is, yes, they were not happy about being laid off, but they understood. They weren't disgruntled. They weren't pissed off. They understood that the company had done everything they absolutely could to not get to that point. And they understood that every question they had, no matter how difficult or how hard it was or how uncomfortable it was, the leader was willing to step up and stand up in front of everyone and address it the best they could. This is what builds trust within organizations. And I promise you, if you implement that into your leadership style and how you move forward, it will give you huge, huge dividends. So an actionable tip for this is hold regular open forums where team members can ask questions and share their concerns. Don't shy away from it. Don't act like they don't exist. Okay, great. So the second tip I want to give you is lead by example. Model the behaviors you want to see. When your team sees you acting with integrity and consistency, they're more likely to do the same. Look, is anyone perfect? No. Will you make mistakes? Yes. Will there be times in your work life that maybe you may have to act differently for political reasons, or you can't share certain things, or you may have to be a little more cryptic than what you're used to? There are chances that will happen. But you know what? If you've done the work on the front end, if you've consistently, as much as you could, led by example and been that person of high integrity, people will notice. People will give you that courage to say, you know what? I know Sarah's acting different right now, but there must be a reason for it. So, I know Tasha or Tanya or Alex or Javier or Brad. I know that over the time I've worked with them, they've been consistent. They've been having open communication. They've been transparent. They've always walked the walk. And now something is different. And if they're asking me to trust them, then I'm gonna give them some trust. But that only happens. It only happens when you've done the pre-work, where they talk about, digging your well before you need the water. Yeah, you don't want to sit here and ask for trust in a situation um, for the first time when you're in a bad situation. Not a good idea. So again, whether if you're in a bad situation right now, if you're in a situation where your organization is going through a lot of turmoil and change, the first thing I would do today, when you listen to this, when you watch this, is go talk to your people and let them know, hey, you know what? Some things may be coming down the pike soon. I don't know how they're going to impact us. I don't know when they're going to impact us. I don't know if they're going to impact us. But I promise you that moving forward, I will be as transparent as possible. I will be as transparent as possible. So if you have a questions, I want you to ask me about it. And we will have those conversations. Again, as a leader, you have to know how to have those conversations so you don't get yourself and them in trouble, right? But you need to be able to have those conversations. So actionable tip from this section is be punctual, right? An easy way to show that you're about what you're about is if you say you're gonna be somewhere. When you say you're gonna be there, keep your promises and admit your mistakes. Say I'm sorry. Now, finally, there is in the third one I want to share with you is empower your team. Look, trust grows when people feel valued and empowered. Give your team the autonomy to make decisions on their own work. Does this mean throwing them out to the wolves? Does this mean saying you got to figure out everything yourself? I'm going to let the reins go and I'll come back next summer and see what happened. No, it does not mean that. It means that you have an open conversation with your team about what the outcomes need to be, why these outcomes need to be addressed. Have a conversation with them. Then once you've talked about why this needs to happen and what needs to happen, what the outcomes and what success looks like, then you can say, how do you think this can be addressed? Right? What timeline do you think works given our overarching constraints regards the bigger timeline or the budget constraints that we have or the other resources we have? I'd like you to share with me a strategy for how you can move forward. Again, so many organizations that actually hire us to lead these our team building workshops and executive retreats. So many of them come to us because they have a problem with proactivity. They say my team members are not proactive. They don't step out and make decisions. They come to me to do everything for them, and I can't do my job as an executive leader and their job. And unfortunately, the biggest reason for this we find when we go in and start doing our assessments and doing our interviews and so on and so forth is that there's no trust there. Whether it is because you have unintentionally done something that has diminished trust, like someone brought an idea and you're like, oh, that's a stupid idea, right? You could do something like that, and hopefully you haven't done something like that. But sometimes it's something that you have done unintentionally that has undermined someone and made them feel like they were less valued and less competent, and so on and so forth. So now they're a little gun shy on how to move forward. Or honestly, the other big one is that it wasn't even you. It was the team or the organization or the leader in place before you that drilled into them that you do not do anything without my sign off. You are one of my minions. You do exactly what I say. Don't take a step further or else. Right. And if someone has grown up or been in that culture, been in that work environment for a substantial amount of time, they learn how to behave, right? If they learn how to survive. That's a better way of saying it. They learn how to survive. And so to take someone who has learned how to survive and then put them in an environment where you're saying, yeah, it's safe now. They're like, I don't trust this, right? So it will take time. But I also think that it's important to I do think it's also really important to identify those people in those situations who have been in those surviving scenarios and say, hey, look, um, I realize this is how it was. This is not how I want to operate. What can we do to to build trust within our team. Have that conversation, identify those actionable behaviors you can do and you implement. And you have to make it, for a leadership standpoint, you have to make a commitment to doing those things, right? To making sure that you follow through on your commitments. Now, if after 6, 7+ months, you've done what you've said, and those people are still gun shy, and those people are still hesitant, then now it becomes another conversation. Hey, look, 6 months ago, we had this conversation about what I would need to do to build, to grow trust with you. And I've done these things. Do you believe I've come through with these commitments? Yes. Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay. So, but it feels like you are still not at a place where we can operate, we're operating proactively, like proactively, like I need you to, because I need your support. I need you to help me come up with a plan for how you can move forward. And because this is something that's really critical for not only my success and the team's success, but also your success. I know you can do this. I know you can do this, but we need to get you over this hump, right? And so having that conversation. So here's the thing. Actionable tip number 3, delegate meaningful tasks and trust your team to deliver. Again, it does not mean throwing them to the wolves. It means having that very trust-filled conversation about what the goal is, what the parameters are, allowing them to come up with how they reach there, and then you being a supporter or a coach, some may call it a coach, throughout the project, right? Not stepping in and fixing things for them, but challenging them, questioning them, making them think differently. So those are 3 things I wanted to make sure I share. And there's 2 more pieces, and we'll wrap up. A quick story about trust is that, again, I love it because, again, this leader I was working with, they were dealing with substantial change within their organization. They had about 250 employees within that section of the organization, and it was just overcome by so many rumors, and everyone was just getting it wrong. There's so many crazy rumors that were flying, but you know why the rumors were flying, right? Because there was no open communication. Because the leadership team had decided, hey, until we knew exactly what was going to happen, we won't say anything. And that is not a way of building trust. It made people feel like someone was hiding something, right? Which then doesn't help foster trust. And when people don't have, when there's a vacuum for information, the vacuum gets filled with something, and rumors start coming up. And the first thing we had them implement, and now they've been doing it for over almost a year now, actually. And I just led their executive retreat a few weeks ago, and they shared just how loved those weekly staff brown bags are. So they have the executive that leads the organization has a weekly 30-minute call where anyone can jump on and ask any question. They'll do their best to address whatever the question is. They'll capture that and then share it on their website for anyone who can't, internal website for anyone who can't be there. And that thing has just been so powerful. So many positive reviews have come, so many positive emails, so many stats have improved, employee engagement stats have improved, just simply by communicating more oftenly and more transparently. So here's one last thing I do. I always do at my workshops and my retreats, and I encourage you to do the same thing, whether you're doing it with a team or with an individual. Just do a start, stop, continue, right? Here's all you have to do is you come to that conversation, you let the person know the context of it. Hey, I just took this leadership course. Hey, I just listened to this amazing podcast, The Executive Pill, and they were talking about just how important establishing and reestablishing trust in our relationships are. And they suggested we do something called a start, stop, continue. Do you mind if I try this with you? We'll see if it works. If it doesn't, I try something else. But I feel like our relationship really means a lot, and building trust in this relationship will mean a lot to me. And if the person says yes, then great. So it's called a start, stop, continue. I'd like you to identify just one thing I can start doing that will ultimately increase trust within our relationship. And then one thing that I can stop doing that would ultimately increase trust in our relationship. And then also one thing I can continue doing that would ultimately increase trust within our relationship. This is a great tool. Why? Because it allows you to come up with actionable behaviors, things that you can actually do, not thoughts, not theories, not all that, again, not just feelings. It's What can I actually start doing, stop doing, and continue doing? Capture those things. Talk about those things. Understand them. Ask clarifying questions. Come up with a plan for how you can implement some of these. Again, if they're reasonable, right? They can't say, "I want you to start giving me a." They say, "I want you to start giving me a $10,000 raise every month." You maybe say, "Okay, well, that's not possible." But it sounds like you're trying, like you want to be appreciated more, right? And so let's have that conversation. But also, don't stop there. If you're able to have the conversation with identifying their start, stop, continues, say, he also recommended that we do it the other way around. Do you mind if I share some of my start, stop, continues with you? And do the same process so they can understand what they can do to build trust with you, because trust is a two-way street, right? Ultimately. And again, you can do the same this with your team. You can do it specifically towards goals and for the team. Again, we just did it recently for an executive retreat where they identified three very, very important goals for this upcoming year, 2025. And so what they did was we did a start, stop, continue. Okay, in order to reach this goal, what will each of us commit to start doing, to stop doing, continue doing? And we always say stop. And people forget about that one. They always say stop because at the end of the day, if you add something new to the plate, you got to remove something from the plate. That's how time works. That's how space works. You only have 24 hours in a day. If someone gives you a project that's going to take you an extra hour, you don't magically get 25 hours. You still only have 24 hours. That means you have to reduce something or remove something. So when we start talking about that, what are you going to stop doing? That is intentional because it allows you to free up space and time so you can implement those new behaviors, those new asks. Look, this has been Alex Tremble with the Executive Appeal. If you found this valuable, please do click that like and subscribe button. I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments section, especially given that we're now doing more of these solo episodes, just because some of you all have been talking about just they love the interviews and they want to kind of dive into some of these topics more. And so this is our attempt of doing that. And so I'm hoping to hear from you. What do you like? What do you think we can improve, and so on and so forth. As always, I encourage everyone, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.